Hello, I'm Pete Martin from www.jazz-mandolin.com. Thanks for watching. Today's topic is using thirds in your improvising, especially on dominant seventh chords. Using a third of the dominant seven chord as a keynote in your improvising is a very cool trick that bebop players used a lot, and I'm going to show you a bit of how they did it here. First, let's take a look at a little bit of music theory. Looking at all these chord types and how they're constructed, notice that all of these chords that were previously on the screen had roots, or the number 1, and fifths. So the roots and fifths of a chord don't really give much information about what the function of that chord is. The most common notes of the chord that give the informations are thirds and sevenths, and then any alterations like flat or sharp 5s, sharp 11s, and sharp or flatted 9s, any alterations. We're not going to cover that here. We're just going to look at these, at the main chords we see in jazz: major 7, 6th, dominant 7, and minor 7. All of those have roots and 5s. The thirds are sometimes major, sometimes minor, and the 7s are sometimes the normal 7th of the scale or the flatted 7th of the scale. If you don't understand what I mean here, you need to study some music theory and understand how chords are constructed. It will really help you in being able to figure out what to play against certain chords if you know how those chords are constructed and what notes are in those chords. So I think that's a very minimum thing that you need to study in music theory. Like I said, the thirds and the sevens especially carry the color and the function of the chord. So let's look at the third because it's extremely useful. The first thing to be able to do is find the third for any dominant 7 that you need. So if I was to play a D7, my third, D, E, F sharp, my third note would be an F sharp note. I think it's a good idea to learn how to play the third of any chord. So it's a good idea to start with some dominant 7 chords on a play along, and just whenever the chord comes in, find the third note. I illustrate that here with a D7, G7, C7, and F major 7 progression. Jazz players like Charlie Parker and especially Clifford Brown in the bebop era used thirds with approaches to them. They actually used all kinds of chord tones and approaches, but we'll look at thirds because they're so effective and they're easiest to kind of get going on. So we'll use the thirds on dominant 7 chords like I've mentioned a few times. I have written 14 examples, and I'll show you those here. Plus, you can email me and ask for the PDF file that's called Approaches to Thirds on Dominant Chords. If you email me and ask me, I'll send you the PDF, and then you can follow with the video here. all the examples use a D7, D like dog, D7 as the dominant chord that we're going into. So the third of a D7 chord is the note F sharp, and we'll use the F sharp, the second fret, on the E string as our target. All right. The first example is chromatic below the target and then the target note. So in this case, F sharp to F. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want the F sharp to be on beat number 1 where the new chord comes in. Later in the video, I'll play all these examples with a play along so that you can hear them. Example 2 is exactly the opposite. We go from the scale tone above to the target. So this will be the notes G and F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are the simplest approaches from above and below, chromatic from below, and scale tone from above. All right. So now let's combine those two notes, the two approach notes. The first one, which will be example 3, will be scale tone above and chromatic below, and then the target. So 1, 2, 3. So the notes G, F, F sharp. Once again, putting the F sharp on beat number 1 of the measure where the D7 chord comes in, the D dominant 7 chords. Okay. Example number 4 is the opposite of that. Chromatic below, scale tone above, and then the target. Once again, remember the target is on beat number 1, where the D7 chord first starts. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so far those are pretty simple ideas. Okay. More approach notes. We can come up from 2 chromatic notes below the target, then 1 chromatic note to the target, and then the target. So this is example number 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then we can come down from above to the target, so 2 scale notes above, 1 scale note above, and then the target. 1, 2, 3. Number 7 has 3 approach notes. This one will be 1 scale tone above, 2 chromatic tones below, 1 chromatic tone below, then the target. 1, 2, 3. So let me do that again. 1, 2, 3. So the notes I'm playing here, G, E, F, F sharp. F sharp, of course, being the target. Another 3-note approach is 2 chromatic tones below the target, 1 chromatic tone below the target, the scale tone above the target, and then the target. 1, 2, 3. Let me do that again. 1, 2, 3. So this one, once again, you start on the end beat of 3 because you want to put the F sharp note on the first beat of the next measure. So it's the notes E, F, G, F sharp. F sharp being the target. Okay, example 9. 2 chromatic notes below the target, scale tone above, 1 chromatic note below the target, and then the target. 1, 2, 3. You hear this in quite a lot. 1, 2, 3. So the notes E, G, F, F sharp. Example number 10, I'm going to do 2 scale notes above the target, one scale note above the target, a chromatic note below the target, and then the target. It's another 3-note approach. 1, 2, 3. You hear this one quite a lot, and it doesn't really matter what style of music. You hear this one in quite a number of styles of playing. So A, G, F, F sharp. 1, 2, 3. Now, of course, as I'm giving you these, you should eventually learn these in all keys. Okay, so these are just examples in one key, but it's your job to then take them and go through all the rest of the keys. Now, in the examples, I give them in more than one place on the fingerboard. I give them on the E string, and I also give them on the D and A string, so you can hear the same note, basically, the same phrase, basically an octave lower. So you should learn this wherever your thirds are, anywhere on the fingerboard for that chord, and the fingering it takes to execute these approaches. Okay. Now in 11, I'm going to use a 4-note approach, and then I'm going to add one more note afterwards. So after the F sharp, I'm going to add a D after the F sharp. This is a very common bebop just a typical cliche in the bebop language to end on an offbeat, and especially the offbeat after the target. So here, a 4-note approach, 2 scale tones above the target, 1 scale tone above the target, 2 chromatic notes below the target, 1 chromatic note below the target, target, and then the target on the third, the F sharp, and then I'm going to play the root of the D chord, the D. 1, 2. See, it's really starting to sound like a bebop line now. 1, 2. So let me go through these notes. A, G, E, F, F sharp, and D. Very, very cool bebop sounding line. Example 12, another 4-note approach. One, two. So this is 2 scale notes above the target, 2 chromatic notes below the target, 1 chromatic note below the target, 1 scale note above the target, and then the target on the third, and then the root note following. 1, 2. So once again, example 12 is A, E, F, G, F sharp, D. Once again, the F sharp is the first beat of the D7 chord, the dominant 7 chord we're dealing with. Example 13. 2 chromatic notes below the target, 1 chromatic note below the target, 2 scale notes above the target, 1 scale note above the target, and then the root note. 1, 2. 1, 2. A little slower. 1, 2. Okay, so these are the notes E, F, A, G, F sharp, and D. Okay, one final one. This is example number 14. This is 2 chromatic notes below the target, 2 scale notes above the target, 1 scale note above the target, 1 chromatic note below the target, and then the D note following, the root note following. You hear this one all the time in jazz as well. And this is one that'll work in any other style pretty comfortably. It's like a little blues kind of riff almost. All right, so the notes: E, A, G, F, F sharp, and D. 1, 2. So I play all of these examples here with the backing track. So I would suggest going through these and then learning these on basically in all the keys. First of all, the first thing to do is be able to find the third on a dominant 7 chord. And I would start with putting on a play along like Band in a Box or iReal Pro of a circle of fifths of dominant 7s. You don't have to play the entire circle, but maybe start with like 4 chords in a circle, like D7, G7, C7, F major 7. By the way, these approaches will work against either 6th or major 7 chords as well, because they have a major 3 in them. These will not work against a minor 7 chord because they have a flat 3, and that is a totally different sound, the third and the flatted third. So because these approaches are all to a normal third or a major third, as it's called, these will not work going to a flatted third. Okay, generally players have a different set of lines to do that. So that would be something also. I'll take a look at that in a future video. Anyway, good luck with this, and make sure to email me and get the written examples. But start slowly and just work through them and add a couple of the more, embellished phrases that are later. Start with the early ones, get comfortable with those, and then you'll find that these chromatic approaches just start to work their way into your improvising, and you'll be surprised at how much more jazzy and especially how much more bebop-like it'll sound. Okay? I'm Pete Martin. Thanks for watching. Make sure you visit www.jazz-mandolin.com.